It is good to be together. Whether you're attending worship with us online or are here in this circle sanctuary. I'm the Reverend Lynn Gardner. She and they are pronouns to use when referring to me, and I have the honor of serving this congregation along with my co-minister, Reverend Wendy Bartell. Please use Wendy's name when referring to Wendy. If sharing pronouns is a practice that is unfamiliar to you and you have questions, we're happy to talk with you about that. At UUSS, we welcome all diversities of religious heritage, economic situation, physical ability, gender identity and expression, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, and age, which means we are so glad that you have chosen to be with us today. In these turbulent times, we hope that this congregation can be a source of inclusive, progressive, and humane values.
Let us take some time to sit together in stillness, accompanied by lovely baby sounds. Thanks, Zoe. You might place your feet on or towards the floor, connecting to the earth beneath us. Maybe your hands are resting in your lap or wherever they are most comfortable. You might close your eyes or soften your gaze towards the chalice or the floor, as this can help us get a little bit more quiet, a little bit more centered, that we might hear that inner voice. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. And breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I might be a little fussy. And now just notice where you are breathing. Is it just little wisps or maybe gasps? Can you maybe move your breath down into your lungs a bit gently now? Don't force it, but just maybe bringing your breath down a little bit. Maybe the tightness in your shoulders is getting in the way of breathing more deeply, so maybe you can just bring them up like in a shrug closer to your ears and then maybe roll them back and down with an exhale. And if that felt really good, to go ahead and just do it again. Those of us who spend a lot of time over computers or hunched over something, it'd be good to remind our shoulders where they actually go. Our bodies are keeping track of all that we are living. And right now, we know from having lots of conversations that many of us are worried. We're feeling a lot of stress. And our bodies keep track of what our minds are experiencing. So maybe for a few moments, we'll give them something else to do for a while. So as you notice your body as you're breathing, bless you. Maybe you start to notice any places of tension. Maybe there were some in your shoulders already, or maybe you got some in your low back, or maybe your hands or forearms are just really tight. And you just sort of imagine yourself breathing into those places energetically, imagining maybe the muscles softening a bit, maybe the knots releasing. And continuing our breathing a little deeper, a little slower. allowing those stress hormones, our cortisol, maybe to lower some. And as our body continues with the practice of breathing and releasing, let's engage our imagination for some goodness. Between now and, let's say, I don't know, Wednesday morning or so, what do you hope happens? Can you imagine the ease and joy of voters in every state being able to cast their vote without fear of reprisal? Let's try it. Can you imagine the joy as voters line up patiently waiting their turn to vote on Tuesday if they haven't done early voting? Exactly. Can you picture all the folks staffing the polling location being friendly and helpful? And hearing those little gurgles, can you imagine all the little bubbles next to the names of people you hope win this election? Can you picture all those little bubbles on the ballots of the people that you want to be elected filled in by voters in your community? Go ahead and picture it. And maybe casting our mind forward a little bit further as our body continues to breathe and release stress. Let's picture a little bit further down the road, some unknown time, but hopefully soon, in which we know the results and we rejoice. And even a little bit further out, picturing the inauguration of the candidate who will help lead this country towards more fairness, towards caring for one another, towards a just path to immigration, towards economic stability, towards listening to the needs of the American people. Picturing that inauguration, and even more importantly, picturing the next day as the work of governing is shared. So that means we need to picture ourselves in this too, picturing ourselves doing the work of creating a more peaceful world, a more just world. A place where we hold our leaders accountable for the promises they've made. So, in the coming days and weeks, when our minds go wandering into places we should not let them go, as James Taylor sings, invite them instead to imagine the world we want to be part of creating. And because the government is not who will save us from the mess we are in, we need to imagine ourselves in the story too. Democracy is of the people, for the people, by the people, and we are part of those people. We have a role much larger than just voting. So let us imagine the ways in which we too will continue to be involved, not just in voting, but in strengthening our democracy where every voice truly matters. And that we lean more deeply into our U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in its ever more growing inclusive forms. Centering in the love that holds us by whatever name feels right to you. Let us have some moments for our own internal prayers or meditations. And after some shared quiet or more baby gurgles, Maria and the choir will share a song by Leah Morris to help us gently continue on with the service. Breathing in peace. And breathing out love.
We offer our homily today in two sections, with part one before the offering and part two coming after it. This month's theme is commitment to live our UU values. For those of you who are newer to Unitarian Universalism, we refer to ourselves as a living tradition, understanding that life is still revealing life self to us. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and our Universalist heritages. Rather than requiring a belief in a specific creed, we're invited on a free and responsible search for truth and meaning in the context of our human lives. And that truth and meaning may or may not include a belief in divinity. This past June, at our annual General Assembly, the gathered body of delegates voted overwhelmingly to approve a statement of values to be included in the denomination's bylaws. The statement is written in the form of a covenant after defining what each value means in practice. Here's a newer graphic representation of the values. The language begins, "Our shared covenant declares that love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity." For the value of justice, it says, "We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large." For several months, this congregation has been invited by the UU The Vote, the UU The Vote team, a sub-team of the Social Justice Action Team, to get involved in protecting democracy. Our faith, and therefore we, its adherents, participants, value justice. And because we value justice, we're invited to do the personal work and the systemic work of addressing the many forms of injustice that permeate our communities. Because we do not have the resources to do all of the things, we need to be mindful of what we choose to do to have the most impact, right? We can't address everything. This year, we're addressing injustice as it is played out sometimes in our electoral system. Over 100 people connected with this congregation have participated already in this year's Get Out the Vote initiative through our denomination's UU the Vote program. Letters, postcards, texts, phone calls, poll watchers, poll volunteers, canvassers, people who contributed finances and stamps, so much more. Together, we have strengthened democracy by inviting others, regardless of their party affiliation, to register and to vote. We've supported nonpartisan initiatives like New York State's Prop 1, working with organizations like New York UU Justice and Planned Parenthood. We have followed the lead of community organizations in swing states to reach voters there. Tomorrow night, we'll have our final text bank, which will include a quick training for those of us who haven't participated in a text bank yet. All you need is a laptop computer and a phone number will be provided. It's amazing, really.
And then there were folks who painted rocks, and there were people who did all kinds of other things too. For the past few weeks, I have been reading and referring to an important, small, but mighty book. Maybe you have seen it. It came out in 2017, written by Timothy Snyder, a white male history professor at Yale. It's called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. And I've been pondering some very serious things. Maybe some of you have been too in this election season. And I'm just aware of how very easy it is to be duped, to be led astray, to say or do things that do not align with our values because we're willing to rewrite those values as humans to assuage a dictator or others who are wielding threats of violence. Those who are inferring are actually quoting other fascists or communists or other party dictators, all while denying that's what they are doing. The first lesson in this book is do not obey in advance. Do not obey in advance. Snyder writes, in 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union, the SS took the initiative to devise the methods of mass killing without orders to do so. The SS took the initiative to devise the methods of mass killing without orders to do so. They guessed what their superiors wanted and demonstrated what was possible. It was far more than Hitler thought. Now, it can be maybe a little bit easy to distance ourselves across time or across miles, across history. Maybe it's easy to imagine, well, I never would have done that. And that may be true. Some of us might be more immune to obeying in advance, not needing to show our loyalty to a leader who is clearly off the rails. But the science suggests that we are more susceptible than we might realize. Snyder describes an experiment performed in 1961, the same year this building was built. A Yale psychologist, Stanley Milgram, contemplating the Nazi atrocities, wanted to show that there was a particular authoritarian personality that explained why some Germans behaved as they had. He devised an experiment to test the proposition, but failed to get permission to carry it out in Germany, 1961. So he undertook it instead at a Yale University building. The experiment involved the use of electric shock. Students and community members were invited to be participants in the study, and they were instructed to apply an electrical shock to another person if they gave the wrong answer. And we're told, it was explained to them, this is an experiment about learning. Now, the folks who were attached to the wires of the shock devices were behind glass in the very next room, and they were actors. They were not actually being shocked, but the participants didn't know that. They acted as if they were in great pain due to the shock being administered. The study participants were instructed to keep increasing the level of shock even as they witnessed the agony of recipients. Snyder summarizes it this way: people whom they did not know and against whom they had no grievance seemed to be suffering greatly, pounding the glass and complaining of heart pain. Most participants followed the instructions, some even witnessing their victim die. And even those who did not proceed all the way to that point left without inquiring about the health of those people. Milgram grasped from the experiment that people are remarkably receptive to new rules in a new setting. They are surprisingly willing to learn, willing to harm and kill others in the service of some new purpose like learning, if they are so instructed by a new authority. What would you have done? What would I have done? Heather Cox Richardson, a white history professor and daily blogger, has been posting a lot of helpful contextual information, naming some of the parallels between the rise of Nazis and the rhetoric, strategies, comments, and affiliates of the former president who is running for office again. It is stunning to most of us that this presidential race is so close. We are unable to fathom how. Whichever candidate one is voting for, we seem unable to fathom why anyone would vote for the opponent. How on earth can we stay the United States of America when we are so very clearly, scarily, horribly divided?
Whichever way the election results turn out, there will be work to do. The type of work we'll be called to do will vary wildly and widely, depending on the outcome of not only the presidential election, but several local ones as well. We may be asked to get clear on our values and then commit to living them in the face of difficult challenges and impossible questions. Clarity about what we are willing to do and not willing to do. Clarity on what we value, who we trust. Clarity will serve us well. And in the coming days and weeks, we may be asked to be more courageous than we ever dared before. This clarity and courage will help us not obey in advance. Given the many horrible scenarios that we can imagine, perhaps instead we consider the seemingly outrageous tact of hope. Hope. We may be asked to be more caring than we have ever cared before. American historian, playwright, philosopher, socialist, intellectual, World War II veteran, and author Howard Zinn has written several fantastic books like The People's History of the United States and his autobiography, You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train. He was born in New York City to Jewish immigrants. In his memoir, Zinn wrote about hope.
He said, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And he concludes, to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Living now as we think human beings should live, with love at the center, informed by pluralistic views of faith, remembering our interdependence with all of life, building equity, striving for justice, opening to transformation, and practicing generosity.
And now we move into a time to engage in the spiritual practice of generosity to support and sustain this congregation. The new values statement describes generosity this way: we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. The slide is sharing details on different ways that you can make a contribution. Each contribution makes a difference and is gratefully received. Our fabulous music director, Maria Elmer, will lead our UUSS choir in a song by John Berquist. Maria attended the Association of UU Music Ministries this summer and brought back this wonderful song to share.
Reminding me this week when I need that reminder.
Keep singing it to myself, singing it to others.
This week,
Singing all fall.
we have been sharing spiritual practices to provide some tools to cope with the hate and negativity all around us in this not so strange, but really strange election season. In September, we explored invitation as a theme. We shared the breathing practice from a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. And we were reminded by a little lost fruit bat named Stella Luna and their bird friends that we are alike and different in lots of ways. We commingled water here in a ritual of connecting in multi-generational community, reminding ourselves and one another of the healing power of water, healthy boundaries, and care. We also shared a trauma-informed practice, and acknowledging that not all of us have access to all 5 senses, so this can be adapted as needed. That practice, which can be especially helpful when we feel discombobulated or anxious, is we can name 5 things we can see, 4 things we can hear, 3 things we can touch, 2 things we can smell, and 1 thing we can taste.
We were reminded that stereotypes hinder our ability to fully experience one another, and that by shifting our perspective a bit, we may be better able to encounter one another more fully. We chanted a version of the Buddhist metta meditation. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. We shared resources and inspiration from our denomination's headquarters, the Unitarian Universalist Association, for the climate revival, including a powerful music video from Joshua Long, whose chorus goes, "When the storms of life drown you out, and your faith is low and you're full of doubt, see the children play, 'cause there's hope in us. When the winds of change burn your fields and disasters in your life won't yield, remember that there is hope in us." In October, we explored what it felt like to embrace what is and opening to what is possible. We explored the power of opening to forgiveness, opening to the unknown with a strong back, soft front, and wild heart, and lessons from our ancestors. We have been held by poetry, by music from the choir and instrumentalists, by stories, by calls to action, by being still or quiet together in prayer, in meditation. We've shared so many practices leading up to this week because we've wanted you, we have needed for us to have some tools to cope with all the feelings and maybe the cognitive dissonance as we make our way through this election season.
We do not know what the next week or weeks will bring. They didn't include that in seminary. I will tell you, though, we are afraid. These spiritual practices have been helpful to us because I also know and will tell you that we are hopeful. Focusing our thoughts on the outcomes for what we are hoping rather than, well, what we don't want to happen. There's a beautiful poem by James Weldon Johnson, an African-American born in 1871. In addition to his many poetry collections and organizing for the NAACP, Johnson and his brother might be best known for their composition, Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is now considered to be the Black national anthem. This is his poem, The Gift to Sing. Sometimes the mist overhangs my path, and blackening clouds about me cling. But oh, I have a magic way to turn the gloom to cheerful day. I softly sing. And if the way grows darker still, shadowed by sorrow's somber wing, with glad defiance in my throat, I pierce the darkness with a note and sing, and sing. I brood not over the broken past, nor dread whatever time may bring. No nights are dark, no days are long, while in my heart there swells a song, and I can sing. No matter what Tuesday brings, we are in this together. Please, take good care of yourselves and one another. Reach out to friends and family this week and check in on them. And if you have to avoid politics, do that. But just check on them as human beings. Bring folks to the pre-election vigil today at 4 o'clock. Eat really delicious and nutritious food. Drink plenty of water. Sleep when you can. Yes, if you're able. And beloveds, sing. Sing in the shower, sing in the car, sing before and after you vote, sing if you're out on a walk, sing even if you think you can't carry a tune in a bucket. Seriously, sing. Sing because it is good for your body and good for your soul. Sing in this circle and sing to all the circles with whom we are connected, which means sing everywhere, to everyone. Sing. Sing. May we have the clarity and courage to lift every voice in song, in compassion, in justice, and in joy. Salam, shalom, namaste, aho, ashe, amen, and blessed be.